makers, it is Jo here, and today we're here for another Fabric Masterclass where we look at a particular type of fabric. And today we're going to be looking at a new to me fabric, which is Gabardine. It was inevitable that somewhere along the alphabetical order list of fabrics in the Minerva fabric guide that I would come across a fabric that I'd not used before. I have heard of Gabardine, but I didn't know what it felt like. I didn't know what you made with it. I didn't know what the fibre content of it was. So I started to find out a little bit more about Gabardine. I saw Gabardine in the alphabetical order list in the Minerva fabric guide. I felt the swatch, and then I went back and had a look in other sections of the book to see if I could find out some more information. This fabric guide series is linked to our Minerva fabric guide of base cloths and fibre types. The first chapter is all about how fabrics are made, some technical information, a really good section on weight versus thickness, because Gabardine fabric is a very thick fabric, but it's very drapey. So although it's classed as a medium heavyweight, it's not structured and stiff. The reason it's not structured and stiff is because if you check out the fibre type, you'll see that it's a polyester fabric, so it doesn't crease, it's easy to wash, it's quick to dry. It has a viscose content, so that gives it its drape and fluidity. And the one that I'm using today has an elastane content of 6%, which makes it a stretch woven twill gabardine. And when you unpick a fabric type like that, you'll start to immediately realise what the characteristics of it are going to be, so then you can start looking for a pattern. Let's take a look at the Gabardine page and we can find out some specific information. Gabardine has a difficulty rating of 2 out of 5. I think it's easy to sew, it's smooth. I would say how to handle the finishing of it is probably a little bit more, maybe 3 out of 5, but everybody's different and people find fabrics easier to work with than others. Here you'll find the characteristics of Gabardine. So here you'll see information about its twill weave. You've got some general information here about its drape and stretch and the washing instructions. Gabardine normally comes in solid colours, but you can sometimes find it in prints. They come in and out of stock, and it's really suitable for workwear. Anything comfortable that you're going to be sitting in. It doesn't crease too much. It's good for jackets, waistcoats, skirts and trousers, and we'll have a look at some of those in the maker gallery. You can use a universal needle and just match it with the weight of your fabric. So depending on if you have a light gabardine or a heavyweight gabardine, you'll be matching your needle number with the weight of the fabric. There's a swatch, as there is on every page in this section of the book, so you can have a feel of the fabric. The sticker on the back will give you the weight and the fabric content. I'm going to work on some of these sewing tips today, but I don't feel quite as expert as normal because I've never sewn with Gabardine before. You might find that Gabardine also pops up in the suiting category because it's in that family of fabrics. You might also find it pop up in the twill category because it's got a diagonal weave and it's created in the same way as the drill and twill family. So the one that I've got today is a really dark red, probably a little bit darker than you can see on the screen in fact, and this one has an elastane content, so it's got a stretch. It's quite tricky to tell the right side and the wrong side, so I'll show you a little bit of that. Its polyester content is 62%, so that's what it's mostly made of. It's quite spongy when you work with it. It's quite a bouncy fabric, so if you're top stitching, you have to be really careful that you're top stitching in the correct position. It's a little bit trickier to press because you've got that polyester content and it's quite bouncy, but on the plus side, it's opaque unless you're using the white or the ivory one, and you might want to line it, but it's opaque, it's thick, it's heavy, it's got a really great weight. In fact, the whole time I was using it, I was thinking more of the word cloth. It feels like cloth is a better description for what it is than fabric. It's got a real sort of tailoring feel to it. So I had no idea what to make with it because I'd never made it before. So the first thing I thought about doing was checking out some Minerva makers. What are everybody else making with Gabardine? I found some great things in Gabardine, like these soft, easy to wear dungarees. They're really popular for trousers, both fitted styles with details and also for wide leg, easy elasticated pairs. You can make fitted trousers, wide leg trousers with soft pleats at the front, or you can take your trousers and add a waistcoat or a jacket to make a suit. Gabardine is great for oversized shirts in that heavier weight where you layer up and you put items underneath. And it's great for skirts too. This one has a little ruffle around the bottom, or a shorter version also looks good. Because of the stretch of the fabric, you can make fitted dresses, dresses with jackets in a sort of vintage style. Those work well together. And this stunner at the end, which is really showing the fluidity and the drape of the fabric. If you've enjoyed seeing some of those Minerva makers, then do look out for a video from Vicky, which runs alongside this video, where she'll give you some specific pattern pairing for gabardine. That might help you to decide if you're going to have a go at using some of this fabric, and it'll give you a little bit of direction. If you've never sewn this fabric before, or you've never felt it before, then you can also use our sample service, where you'll get a 10cm strip off the full bolt, where you can have a little feel of whether it's going to work for what you've got in mind. It seemed like trousers were a great idea, but I have wide leg trousers, white ones in Bengali, and I have wide leg floaty trousers with crepe. So I was thinking I might make a dress of some kind. I looked at some dress inspiration, and then when I looked through my patterns, I saw the Sew Over It pattern. And when I saw this dress, and I felt my gabardine, I thought, oh my gosh, I can absolutely replicate this dress. This pattern is the Sew Over It Ultimate Shift Dress, and I think the photograph really gives it a bit of a wrong impression, because there's lots and lots of different views on the back of this packet. So for example, the top that I'm wearing at the moment, this is from the same pattern. So it's the same bodice block, but this one has a little flutter frill sleeve. You can make this into a dress. You can make the dress in short sleeve, 3/4 sleeve, long sleeved, but really that image on the front just gives the one view. Anyway, I thought I would make that view because I think this gabardine would make a really great winter dress, because it's that medium heavyweight. This fabric comes in 40 different colours, and I'm just going to show you a little bit closer the detail in the fabric, because it's quite difficult for you to see that just from this red sample here. You need to get a little bit closer to see the texture on the right side and the wrong side, and to also see the movement of the fabric. Close up, gabardine has a really smooth texture. It is part of the twill family, so it does have a diagonal weave, but it's so densely woven that you don't really see that. Because of that dense weave, it's opaque, so it's ideal for making trousers and dresses which can be unlined unless you want to line for comfort. You'll see it's got a slight sheen to the surface, which gives it sort of good highlights and lowlights in those darker shadows. So if you gather the fabric, you can get really nice effects. It's firm enough for collars. You can use a zip, you can use pleats, ruffles, gathers. It's got a lot of different uses. Add that to its fluidity and heavy drape, and you've got a fabric perfect for lots of different uses. Gabardine has a really similar right side and wrong side. It's really difficult to tell which way is which, but if you want to be really accurate with your sewing and you don't want to get any colour distortion between flipping a piece to the wrong side and the right side, you can use the selvage to help you. So if you look along the selvage edge, you'll see lots of perforations, and they're there because they attach the fabric to the loom. Where you see the punch holes going down and making an indent, that's the right side. And on the reverse, where you can see where the spikes have punctured through, that's the wrong side. So this is the wrong side, this is the right side. It might help you to mark your pieces after you've cut them out with either a chalk on the wrong side, or you can put a safety pin in each piece so that you know that if you can see the safety pin, that's the wrong side. I don't normally show the fabric standing up, but I just want to show you the drape of the fabric. It's weighty, it's really fluid. It doesn't crease. So when this has been folded up and posted and it's been pre-washed, and there's hardly any creasing in it. And because of the pre-wash, you'll see this is the fray you'll get on the edge of the fabric. So the fabric is prone to fraying because it's from the twill drill family. Okay, I wanted to show it you whole before I go and cut out. When cutting, I have the fabric on grain, so I haven't got any twisting. I've got an element of stretch there, which is going across the body. And just because I'm getting a little bit of fabric fraying, then today I'm going to choose to cut out with my pinking shears, because while I'm handling the fabric, I won't get any fraying back past the seam allowance. Also, instead of cutting the notches in, I'm going to cut them out in a little V, just so that I don't disturb any distance between the raw edge and my seam line. You can use tailor's tacks to mark any of your markings, but today I'm going to use a piece of carbon paper because I want to definitely make sure that I put the dart on the wrong side of the fabric, because it's hard to see the right side and the wrong side. So I'm using the techniques I think will help me further into the construction. So you put the wax paper with the waxy side touching the fabric, and you use a little serrated wheel. You can use a biro to draw on the dart shape, and then you take out the wax paper and it marks the fabric. You won't be able to see it there, but there's lots of little white dots running on my fabric. So I definitely know that when I pinch that dart together, it will be on the wrong side of the fabric, because I folded my fabric right sides together so that I could put all markings on the reverse. Okay, let's take a look at sewing with gabardine. I'm making the ultimate shift dress, but I'm not going to make it as a sew along. I'm just dipping in and out to show you a few techniques that I found out whilst making this dress. I've got an 80 universal needle in. I'm on a straight stitch and I'm going to sew at 2.5 or 3. I kind of prefer sewing at 3 just because if I have to unpick something, it makes it a little bit easier. This fabric has quite a sort of spongy texture, so I think I'm going to stick with a stitch length 3. Let's see how it sews up. On a straight stitch, I'm not getting any skip stitches, and this gabardine has a little bit of elastane content in it, so it's just still allowing that seam to stretch a little bit if I was making something fitted like trousers. So I'm going to stick with that. Let's have a look at finishing those seams. So I've just peeled them open. I've cut with pinking shears today, but you can go over that with a zigzag if you want to be sure that you're not getting any fray back. If you don't go too close to the edge, it stays nice and flat. If you've got a vintage sewing machine, then you might want to use a straight stitch to turn your seam allowance back and finish with a straight line of stitching. Both of these ways make your seam look really neat. The straight line one is a little bit thicker than the zigzag one. You can also use an overlocker. It overlocks really nicely because it's nice thick fabric, so just get your diff feed on the right number, and you can sew the whole garment on an overlocker. If you're unpicking gabardine, you need to be careful because it is a woven fabric, so if you catch a little thread, you'll get a snag. So lift going away into the raw edge, and you can break every 4 or 5 stitches. This will weaken the seam, but you'll be catching the threads towards the seam allowance rather than the right side of the fabric. And then on the reverse, take the bottom thread and pull it, and then your seam will pull out. If you're really confident, you can seam rip, but make sure you use the ball to make sure that you don't snag the right side of your fabric. When you're sewing darts in gabardine, it's important to back tack at the side seam and not at the tip, because you can't press this out with such a hot steam as you can with cotton fabric. So you want to have a really smooth end to your dart. Be very gradual in your last few stitches. Tie those off loosely, don't pull them tight or you'll make a pucker on the right side. And you should have a smooth dart tip, but you want to be pressing that so that the dart goes down and you get a smooth dart after you've pressed it. As I mentioned in the introduction, pressing gabardine not only is a must to stop your seams looking really bouncy, you do need to be a little bit careful with your iron because you've got a synthetic fibre content. You can use steam with gabardine, but you need to turn your iron down a little bit because if it's too hot, you'll make it slightly shiny, and you also might make darker areas. So I'm going to turn my iron down to silk. And you can also use a press cloth if you need to get a particularly good press, say on a collar, and you don't want to damage the fabric. Seams can be quite bouncy because it's a real heavy drapey cloth, so you'll definitely need to be pressing your seams open. This will help your seam lines blend and it will stop them looking all bouncy, and it really does mean that your garment looks less homemade at the end and it can look really professional. If you're adding interfacing, so I've got neck facings on my garment particularly today, then you need to make sure that you put the interfacing on the right sides of your pieces, because the right side and the wrong side is quite tricky to see. You might end up putting your interfacing on the wrong side of the fabric. So I like to work in opposites, laid out like they're going to be assembled on the garment. That stops me putting the interfacing on the wrong sides. This time I'm going to press, not drag, because I don't want to slide the interfacing off the pieces. You need to use quite a lightweight interfacing with gabardine because it is a fluid fabric, so you don't want to over stiffen it or you'll lose that characteristic of the fabric. Because of the stretch, if you've got elastane in your gabardine, or just because of the general weave of the twill style fabric, then you'll find that you need to stay stitch your necklines to avoid them stretching out, especially if you're putting on a neck facing. For the stay stitching, I've reduced the stitch length down to 2.5 so that it's really stabilised those fibres around the neckline. Other techniques you'll find useful with gabardine, because it's quite a springy fabric with that sort of movability, is to understitch. So I'm flipping these seam allowances, which have been clipped, away from the garment, which is this side, and I'm sewing through the facing and the layers of the seam allowance. I'm nearly at the end of making my dress, so I'm starting to think about how I'm going to hem gabardine, especially with that bouncy characteristic. You can hem gabardine in lots of different ways. Ideally, you want to be finding a method that turns your fabric once. If you turn it twice, it's quite thick and spongy, so you'll need something that gets a crisp edge. You'll need to press it from the right side with a press cloth so you can get a really crisp line to your hem. And you can do it a couple of different ways. You can check out our video on different ways to hem and choose the one you think will suit your project. You can overlock the edge, turn it up once and catch stitch it, and you can just catch a few of the threads on the reverse, because it's a twill fabric, and because I've got a solid colour, I think I might see all my little fabric nicks along the bottom. It does take a top stitch quite well. So this is the cuff of the sleeve. I'm going for an overlock, or you could do a zigzag. I'm going to use my hot hemmer to press up the hem, and then I'm going to top stitch and have a line of stitching that matches my cuffs. You can use a blind hemming foot. There you will see little nicks along the hem, but they will be even. So you just need to think about how you're going to hem it. If you've got trousers, they're going to be low down. If you've got a dress, you might want to consider doing something that's invisible. Okay, so this is the dress. It was a really good choice for gabardine because this is a loose fitting shift dress with a little bit of ease. You can just see those light and dark shadows. I've got it at a sort of knee length. You could also make this short sleeve, a 3/4 sleeve, or you could try the little shoulder head ruffles, but I think the ruffles are probably better for a fabric that's a little bit finer. Although this has a drape, it's a really thick fabric, so it's ideal for winter dresses, trousers, waistcoats, jackets, that kind of thing. One of the top tips I will give you as a first time user of gabardine is this side seam has been pressed with the seams pressed open, and this one hasn't, and you get a real sort of lump and a shadow where if you don't press the side seams it does look a little unprofessional. I wanted the inside here as well not to have a lump, so I used a sleeve board to press that sleeve out nice and flat before I put it into the sleeve hole. That side is really smooth, you can't even see it, but this side just creates that little shadow. You particularly notice it if you make trousers. I mentioned my top earlier, I didn't tell you what the fabric was. So this is one of Minerva's border prints in Viscose Chalet, but I've tipped the border upside down, so I've got the darker border across here and the flowers cascade. It was just a little bit of a different way to work with this fabric. It didn't require any pattern matching, I could just balance out the falling leaves. And I made the view on the pattern that we've been looking at today, but I made the little ruffle sleeve. I don't think gabardine would make this little ruffle sleeve. I think if you did, it would be more this shape, because although the fabric is fluid and drapey, it's not as fine and light as a viscose. So if you want to do the ruffle sleeve, I suggest a fabric that's really good for gathering still with a drape. This is the Minerva fabric guide. It's a comprehensive guide to fabric fibres and base cloths. It's It's not a project book, it's a book all about the background information on fabric. At the start, you'll find information on how fabric is made, the differences between stretch fabrics and woven fabrics. It's a really useful page here on weight versus thickness, because quite often you can't feel the hand of your fabric unless you've had a sample. And this way you'll be able to compare some of the details on the description with the weight descriptions and the weight of the fabric. In the second section, this is where you'll find out all the different information about fibre types. Here you'll be able to get a bit of background detail on why the fabric behaves in the way that it behaves. And of course, in some fabrics, you'll get a mix of more than one fibre, and each one of those will bring something different to the fabric. In the final section of the book, there's an alphabetical order chapter of fabric types. So this one is drill. You get a little piece of fabric, and it's really great for comparing one fabric to another. So if in your mind you think you want to use drill, but when you feel it, you're not so sure, and you think, oh, that diagonal weave is a little bit prominent, then you could compare it to another fabric like twill, and this one has a much softer finish. You might also think you don't like the diagonal weave altogether, and head to a similar fabric and feel the texture and hand of that. There's some really inspirational photography throughout the book. You can follow the maker listed underneath, and if you want to go and explore a fabric further, you can use the QR code on the page, scan this, and it will filter all the fabric type to your search. You won't be searching through thousands and thousands of fabrics that you don't want to look at. You can just hone in on the ones that you do. You can find out more information on this over on our YouTube channel. There's a video from Vicky and one from me where we go into the folder in a little bit more depth. If you'd like to check out any more of the Minerva fabrics, the one that I've used today, the one that I'm wearing, you can head over to our website. You can make a free account there, share your makes, take a photo, give us a little description, and inspire our Minerva makers. You can also join the craft club there, where you will receive discounts and offers throughout the year. If you want to stick here and find out some more about different fabric types, then the Fabric Masterclass will be continuing. We're on G of the alphabet in our Minerva fabric guide, so we've got plenty more for you to see. Thank you very much for watching. Do call again for our next episode.